have a list of 40 books that I would like to read by the time I am 40. I got this idea from the Book Thing, who has a really great list of 50 books to read by the time he is 50. And I just thought this would be a really nice reading challenge for me. For the past couple of years, my reading goals have been purely related to a numerical target, and that's been working until this year. My target this year was 70 books. And although I think I will reach that, I think that's my comfortable limit. And with that, I'm finding that I'm reading a lot of young adult fiction, a lot of romantasy, a lot of easier fiction. And whilst I think there's nothing wrong with that, and I'm really enjoying those stories, I just wanted to try something different and push myself out of my comfort zone. So I've chosen 40 books that scare me a little bit for one reason or another, or that I think I would not get around to reading otherwise. The only rule that I really set for myself was that I couldn't repeat author, but other than that I kind of had free reign. But let's get into it. So I will say I made this list a little while ago, and my memory over what some of them is about is a little hazy, so please forgive me if I don't have anything intelligible to say. I've shot this video a few times actually, and each time I found that when I had this script for myself about what each book was about, I just felt like I was trying too hard to be someone that I'm not, trying too hard to emulate the book creators that I really enjoy watching. And it just didn't seem to work for me whenever I watch myself back. So I'm just going to try and plow through these books quickly and kind of just tell you why I want to read them. And sometimes that reason is going to be really nebulous, but we'll see how it goes. I've put all of my books in date order, so we'll be starting with the oldest first. So book number 1 is the Epic of Gilgamesh, and this is the story of the hero Gilgamesh. So I chose this book simply because I googled what is the oldest story, and a lot of the answers came back with the Epic of Gilgamesh. So I thought I would challenge myself with one of the oldest stories out there. Book number 2 is the Odyssey by Homer. So I really wanted to read either the Iliad or the Odyssey, and for some reason the Odyssey just kind of tickled my interest a little bit more. It's the story of the 10-year journey of Odysseus back to his home in Ithaca. Book number 3 is Beowulf. I've watched the film, and it's a book that I've heard people talking about my entire life, but I've just never got around to reading because I've assumed it's going to be really challenging. Book number 4 is the Mabinogion, and this is a series of Welsh tales of folklore and mythology. So I first came across this book when I was doing my undergraduate in, what was my undergraduate in? Microbiology and zoology. So I was living in Aberystwyth, and I would kind of come across snippets of these tales, but never tried to read the book and never heard a full story, so I'm really looking forward to diving into this one. Book number 5 is The Divine Comedy by Dante. So this is a story of a man's journey towards God. Again, it's just one of those novels I've heard snippets of. I've heard people talking about the 9 rings of hell, so I'm really interested in that. My husband also studied this at school, and whenever we talk about the Divine Comedy, he gets this kind of faraway look in his eye. So I think he found it very challenging, but he did study it in Italian and Old Italian, so maybe my experience will be different reading this in English. But I'm looking forward to this with some trepidation. Book number 6 is The Canterbury Tales by Chaucer, which is the story of a group of monks who are travelling from London to Canterbury Abbey. So I was really torn between The Canterbury Tales and Decameron, but ultimately I chose Canterbury Tales just because it spoke to my English heart a little bit more. But if I get into classics, maybe I will also read the Decameron. Book number 7 is The Monkey King by Wu Cheng-en, and I'll admit that I never heard of this book until I watched the Book King's video on his 50 before 50. His description of the story won me over and I immediately put it on my list, but I will confess I have completely forgotten what the book is about, but I trust that I will love it. I absolutely adore the cover, and I think this will be the first ever classic Chinese literature that I will have ever read, so that's exciting. Book number 8, or should I say text number 8, is Dr. Faustus by Christopher Marlowe. So this is a play about a man who sells his soul to the devil for power, which is right up my street. I was just interested to read an Elizabethan play by someone other than Shakespeare. I haven't read Shakespeare since I was at high school, but I'm just interested to get into something else. And it's also quite a thin book, so it takes some of the fear away. Rightly or wrongly, we'll find out. Book number 9 is a chunky one, and that is Don Quixote by Cervantes. So this is a story of a man who reads too many novels of romance and adventure and becomes a knight. It's the kind of book that sounds like a mix of tragedy and comedy. I'm just nervous to read it because it is so long. But this challenge, it's not about finishing the book, it's about giving everything a really good go. And I find sometimes if I don't get into a book straight away, I can just put it down and then pick it up at a later date, and then try and get back into it again. So I'll give this one a good shot, but it is a lot to get through if I'm not enjoying it. I think it's, what are we on, like 940 pages. It's quite intimidating. Book number 10 is Mole Flanders by Daniel Defoe, and this is supposed to be the story of a woman's life from her birth in Newgate Prison to her death. I'm just really interested to read the story of a woman written by a man in this time period and what that looks like. Book number 11 is a classic. It's A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. This one doesn't scare me. I've seen like a million different film adaptations of this, and I'm particularly fond of the one that Patrick Stewart is in. But I just don't really feel like I would get around to reading this if it wasn't part of a reading challenge. It's also very thin, much thinner than I expected from a classic Dickens novel. I literally hate the cover, but I ordered it off World of Books, and the book, or the cover that I thought I was getting, wasn't this one. So I have to admit, if I like the book and I can find one that I prefer the look of, I will be replacing this. Book number 12 is Moby Dick by Herman Melville. It's the story of Captain Ahab who hunts the whale that took his leg. It just sounds like a really interesting story to me, and it's a classic I've heard people talking a lot about throughout my life. What makes me a little nervous about this book is I've heard there's some quite lengthy sections that go into the details of whaling history, and whilst I'm really interested in history, reading historical novels is fine, but reading history non-fiction is something that I find challenging and often not very interesting unless it's something that I have a very specific, strong interest in. So that's what makes me nervous about this one, but actually also a little bit excited to learn something new and try something new. Book number 13 is The Dubliners by James Joyce. I wasn't brave enough to go with Ulysses, but this is a story, or a set of stories, about the lives of ordinary Dubliners. I chose James Joyce, I think, for fairly obvious reasons. I've never read any James Joyce, but he's just one of those authors that people talk about as a challenge, and I'm just curious about why that is. But as well as being a challenge, he's very celebrated, so I'd really like to give him a go. But yeah, I think the stream of consciousness that I've heard he uses in Ulysses was just it just went a little bit far. So this looks like a softer way to get into James Joyce, and I really hope that I'm not going to regret saying that. Book number 14 is Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. Franz Kafka was one of those authors that I feel like people read very performatively when I was a teenager, and because of that I've just steered completely clear of Franz Kafka. But when I was making this challenge up, he was one of those authors that just kept coming to mind. So I read the synopsis of the Metamorphosis and the Trial and was really torn between the two of them. But the Metamorphosis is about someone that wakes up and finds that they are a giant insect, and that just really interested me. It's also a very thin book, so I'm hoping that it's a nice way to kind of get into Kafka without feeling too overwhelmed by something really chunky. So I'm actually really excited to read this, and I imagine it's going to be one of the first novels that I approach on this list. Book number 15 is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. Other than absolutely loving the cover, I have some regrets over choosing this book. I really wanted some Virginia Woolf in my list because she's just a classic female author that I haven't read before. But it's the story of the day in a life of a woman who's organising a party, and I don't know if I realised before I bought it that it's supposed to be stream of consciousness, and that does really intimidate me, but maybe that's a good thing and a good reason to have it on this list. So I'll give it my best go, but I think it's going to be difficult to push myself to pick this when there's still a lot of books left in my list. Book number 16 is The Silmarillion by Tolkien. I've only recently read The Lord of the Rings. I've tried to read The Lord of the Rings several times in my life and not managed, but this year I was successful. I love fantasy, but there's just something about the pacing of Tolkien that I really struggle with. But I did find a love for it this year, and I also managed to watch all of the films all in one day with some friends. We made Hobbit snacks. It was great. But yeah, so I am developing this love and appreciation for Tolkien that I never had before. The Silmarillion is supposed to be more of a history of Middle-earth, so it's supposed to be quite challenging, but I'm looking forward to fleshing out that world a little bit more. Book number 17 is The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. I can't remember what this is about other than the fact that it involves a talking cat, and that on its own is enough to tempt me. But I think this one scares me because all Russian classic literature is a little intimidating to me. But because of the talking cat, I'm looking forward to this one. Book number 18 is The Call of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft. I really wanted some Lovecraft on here for some classic horror, but I was also tempted by The Mountains of Madness, but I have seen that in the form of a play, so I chose this one just to have something a little new. Book number 19 is All Quiet on the Western Front by Eric Ramier Remarque. This is about a group of idealistic German schoolboys who become disillusioned by the realities of trench warfare in World War I. I don't necessarily think that the text is going to be difficult to read in this one. I think what scares me, or I know what scares me about this book, is more of the story content, because I think it's just going to be really horrible and difficult, but I think also really important, especially because when studying World War I and World War II at school, we, I guess, very naturally took a very British view on things. So I'm really looking forward to reading about the war, the First World War, from a German perspective. Book number 20 is As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner. I've heard that William Faulkner's writing is really difficult, but I don't know because I've never tried. This is a story about the death of a woman. She requests to be buried in her hometown, and it's the journey that is taken to take her body there, and the stories of why the people who are taking her there are there and what they're thinking. I don't think I described that very well. but I'm looking forward to this one, possibly because I'm getting quite into American history, weirdly. I never saw that being on my bingo card for life, but there we have it. I think I'm going to try and squeeze all of the books into one video to not drag it out. Book number 21 is A Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. All I can remember about this story is that it is a classic dystopian. Need I say more? I like dystopian and I'm trying to challenge myself by getting into more classics. So that's why this is number 21. Book number 22 is The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. This is the story of some people that are forced to leave their home during the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. I loved Of Mice and Men when I was in high school. We had to do it as part of our English literature GCSE. So I'm really looking forward to reading more from John Steinbeck. Book number 23 is For Whom the Bell Tolls by Ernest Hemingway. This is set in the Spanish War, and it's the story of a man that needs to blow up a bridge, and it follows him for 3 days. No, that's not true. I have read Ernest Hemingway. I've read The Old Man and the Sea, and I have really enjoyed that, but it's much shorter. So I'm looking forward to reading this. I mean, Hemingway, it's classic, he has to be on the list, right? So book number 24 is Animal Farm by George Orwell. So this is the story of a group of animals that rebel against their farmer to form a utopian society, and it all goes wrong. I think this is where that phrase, all animals are equal but some are more equal than others, comes from. So I'm just looking forward to reading the story behind that line. I did break my rule because as this is book number 24, for book number 25, which I actually don't have with me, is 1984, another classic dystopian. It's something that my dad has read and he's sending up his copy of the book down from England. So I'm looking forward to reading it, but they're just two classics that I was really interested in, and I just couldn't seem to move past wanting them both on my list. And because it's my list and it's my challenge, I'm letting myself have this one. Number 26 is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. This is another classic dystopian, and it's about a fireman who, rather than fights fires, he burns books. So it sounds like a really important one to read. Book number 27 is Lolita by, I've forgotten, Vladimir Nabokov. And I think, I mean, if you've heard of Lolita, you'll know why, I think this is going to be challenging. It's the story of a man who grooms a little girl, and it's told from his perspective. Somebody has told me that one of the challenging things about this story is that it gets you empathizing with him. I don't know if empathizing is the right word, because as I say, I've never read this story, but that sounds challenging to me, but like something that I would like to try and tackle and see how it makes me feel. Book number 28 is Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, and this is the story of the downfall of a Nigerian warrior and the destruction of his way of life by colonialism. I'll admit I'd never heard of this book until I watched the book things 50 before 50, but it sounded really interesting to me. And one of the things that I noticed about my entire list is it was very male and it was very white, predominantly, and that's something that I wanted to break up with a singular book. But it did make me think that I also want to start a second challenge, because you can never have too many challenges, and that is a read around the world. So I now also have a list of all of the countries in the world according to the UN, and I'm gonna slowly start ticking those off. I'll focus on this 40 before 40 first, but if I can, I will also start chipping away at reading around the world. I think that one will probably take a few years, but I'm really looking forward to just broadening my literary horizons a little bit. Book number 29 is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. Again, a bit like Virginia Woolf, I chose Sylvia Plath just because she's a classic female author and I wanted to include her in the list. The Bell Jar is the story of a woman who has a mental breakdown. It's in the 1950s, so I'm really interested to see what that looks like to society in this time period. But I'm also nervous to read it because, I don't know, the name Sylvia Plath just makes me a little bit afraid. Like I'm somehow not clever enough to read Sylvia Plath. But there's one way to find out. Book number 30, we have A Clockwork Orange. I don't know a lot about this story other than it's a dystopian and it's a classic. And I know there's something in it to do with drinking milk. I remember snippets of the film, but I remember either when it was made or when it was very popular. I wasn't allowed to watch it because I was too young. So I just remember managing to see a few scenes that was drinking milk. And that's enough to have sparked my interest. So I'm looking forward to finding out what that's all about. Number 31 is A Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut. So again, another classic dystopian slash sci-fi. All I know is that it's about the atomic bomb and the discovery of another world-ending weapon. Book number 32 is Dune by Frank Herbert. I've loved all of the movies, including the classic ones that were made in the 80s, I believe. So I love the story, but I'm nervous to read the book because I've heard there's a lot of kind of just dropping you into the world with very little context, and I'm not always a fan of having to keep flicking back to the glossary to find out what things mean. But hopefully, because I have watched the films and I understand the story, it will make this book a little bit easier for me to digest. Book number 33 is Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee by Dee Brown. So Wounded Knee was the site of a massacre of Lakota Indians, and the book is about the destruction of Native American way of life. I have found myself getting more into American history, specifically that kind of Wild West era. I've loved playing Red Dead Redemption 2. I've really got into Larry McMurtry, and I've been reading a little bit of Cormac McCarthy. So all of those stories are kind of told from one perspective, so I thought it would be interesting and important for me to read a little bit about the Native American way of life and what happened. But I think it's going to be really challenging, just because, a bit like All Quiet on the Western Front, I just think historically it's going to break my heart. Book number 34 is Watership Down by Richard Adams. I don't think this is going to be difficult to read because I know it's a book sort of aimed at, I guess, older children or young teenagers. I think the child in me is worried this will be challenging because it's about a group of rabbits who have to escape the destruction of their home and find a safe place to live. But I don't think I would have got around to reading this if it wasn't part of a challenge. I didn't watch the film, I didn't read the book in my youth because I thought it would upset me, so I'm prepared to be upset as an adult. Book number 35 is Shogun by James Clavell. My husband loved this book, so I kind of want to read this fairly classic novel because of him. But I just don't know if it's something that's going to interest me. It's definitely out of my comfort zone, and it's a chunky one. Book number 34 is The Neuromancer by William Gibson. So this is another book that my husband really loves, but I'm just not sure it's going to be up my street. I think it's supposed to be, well, I know it's classic sci-fi, and I think it's supposed to be slightly cyberpunky, which is a genre that I do like, but for some reason this one just gives me a bit of trepidation. Book number 37 is Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So this is a story of a long-standing love that I'm not sure if it gets realised in the end or if it's just a long period of love. Gabriel Garcia Marquez is a classic author. I have read 100 Years of Solitude when I was a teenager. Don't know anything about it, can't remember anything about it, but because I have read that before, I didn't want to include it on my list, even though I can't remember the story, so I went for this one instead. Book number 38 is The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. I forgot for a second there. It's another really chunky one, which is quite scary. It's the story of the building of a cathedral. Classic historical fiction. It's not a genre I read a lot of. I can see my husband's tried to read it, and that's his place marker there somewhere in the middle, so we'll see if I get further than he did. Book number 39 is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. It's about a group of classicists, and I can't remember what it is that they have to do. Is there a murder they have to solve, or there's some sort of mystery or intrigue? I'm interested in this because it keeps being hailed as like a modern classic, but I'm also scared of it because I've been involved in academia for a while now, but more on the, well, not more, like only on the science side of things. And I have like a slight aversion now to overly overt academia and snobbery and the whole white tower thing, or ivory tower. So I'm going to try and get past my aversion by reading about a bunch of classicists who probably think they're all very clever. We'll see how it goes. Finally, book number 40 is Dove Mi Trovo by Jhumpa Lahiri. So I have read her book in English, Whereabouts. I'm trying to learn Italian because my husband is Italian. We've been together for 6 years now. My Italian is improving, but it is still incredibly poor. I've been reading some children's books in Italian, and by reading I mean like one page takes me a long time, and then I have to go through it with him and we talk about it, and I have to write down all the words that I don't know, and yeah, it's an ordeal. But I would like to try and read one adult novel by the time I am 40 in Italian, and I don't mean read as in keep turning the pages as I would in an English book. I mean annotate and dissect and learn, but get through it. Again, do I regret that? I'm not sure, but we'll see how it goes, and I will try my best. Thank you so much for watching my 40 before 40. I would love to know what books you would put on your list, and I will try and make like a little short video after every book I read to let you know what I think about it. Thank you, and I will see you next time. Number 12, book number... Just because... Why can't I get that sentence out? Book number 28. Book number 28 is When Things Fall Apart. Or is it? No, When Things Fall Apart is a self-help book by Pema Chodron.